Long before the First Era, when gods still walked beside men and the breath of dragons could bend mountains, there lived a king born not of bloodlines but of fury, faith, and the ashes of dead divinity. Wulfharth of Atmora, the Ash King, the dragon of the north, the voice of Shor, a ghost who would not rest, summoned back again and again by the will of gods and men alike. His tale cannot be told in a single story, for he lived not once and died not once. He was a king, a hero, a weapon of heaven, and perhaps of darker things. The Nords do not sing his name in joyful songs. They whisper it before war. They carve it into stone. They shout it into storms when the world needs reminding. These are not songs, they are warnings, they are echoes of destiny, fragments of divine reckoning. These are the 5 songs of King Wulfharth. And the last? The last is the one history tried to silence, a tale of betrayal, blood, and a silence that still weighs upon the world. Listen to them all. Only then will you understand why even the gods fear the name Ysmir. Shor's Tongue. After the defeat of the Alessian army at Glenumbria Moors, the land of Skyrim fell into silence. King Hogue Merkula was dead, slain by foreign blades. The banners of the old ways had been trampled, and the tongues of the true gods silenced. The mountain winds no longer sang of heroes. The Nords, for a time, became wanderers in their own land. It was then, in the first years of the First Era's 6th century, that the chieftains gathered once more under the pact of stone and blood. The old rite, forgotten by many, still held meaning for the sons and daughters of Atmora. And from that ancient gathering, a name rose, Wulfharth of Atmora. He was not the son of a king, nor the heir of a house. He came from the wind itself, a warrior without court, a spirit without rest. But when he stood among them, the other chieftains fell silent, for they saw not just a man, but the echo of something greater, a storm that remembered its name. By law, the chosen must swear the oath of rule aloud, so that all might hear the weight of the voice that would command them. But when Wulfharth opened his mouth, the mountain trembled, the air thickened, the wind recoiled, and no words passed his lips. His Thuum, the divine voice, was so powerful that to speak would mean destruction. Mountains could split, skies could tear. So mighty was his voice that silence itself became his first command. The scribes, trembling, were summoned to record what he could not say, to carve his vow in stone, because the world would not survive it in sound. And so it was written. Wulfharth would restore the old ways. His first decree was not one of tax or territory, but of faith. The Alessian edicts, which had strangled the worship of the Nordic gods for generations, were declared heresy. Their priests were driven from their halls or set to flame within them. Their scrolls burned like kindling beneath the monuments of Shor. And across Skyrim, the people gathered again to speak the names of their gods without fear. Kyne, Mara, Tsun, Stuan, Orki, and Shor. Shor above all. It was said that in the days after the purge, the skies cleared, the beasts grew calm, and the voices of the mountain returned. Some even claimed to see Shor's ghost walking the steps of High Hrothgar, smiling. The scholars of the empire, when they came much later, would call it zealotry. They would call him a fanatic, a warlord, a relic of a primitive past. But to the Nords, he was Ysmir, the dragon of the north. A title not granted, but earned, passed only to those who walk with the gods, and sometimes above them. They called him Shor's Tongue, not for the words he spoke, but for the truth he roared into the world simply by being. His silence was thunder. His breath was scripture. He did not build temples. He awakened them. He did not ask for offerings. The land offered itself. Under his rule, the people of Skyrim remembered who they were. Not pawns of southern empires, not converts to elven creeds. They were children of the voice, kin to the storm, born of Atmora and ice. Wulfharth ruled with a quiet that echoed louder than war cries. His court had no bards, only the wind. And where other kings wore gold, he wore the breath of dragons. But peace does not last in Skyrim, nor does fire remain ash for long. Though his first act was one of faith, the songs that followed would tell of war, of gods both false and true, and of a king whose path would carry him beyond death and back again. This was only the beginning. The breath had returned to the mountain, and Wulfharth had spoken, even without a word. Kind son. When the breath of Shor had stirred the mountains once more, and Wulfharth sat upon the throne of Skyrim, the land began to heal. But slowly, as all things scarred by time and flame must. His enemies, though scattered, were not gone. And those who worshipped the old gods knew that peace was never the natural state of the north. It was in these early years of Wulfharth's reign that the eastern orcs stirred again. Hardened by war and the bitterness of exile, they struck from their mountain holds with fury and flame. Villages were burned, shrines defiled, and the eastern borders of Skyrim became fields of smoke. Wulfharth did not send messengers. He did not seek treaties. Instead, he walked into the wind alone, barefoot upon the snow, to the edge of the world. There, on the peak of a nameless cliff, he spoke to Kine, not with words, with breath. And Kine, mother of Nords, goddess of storm and sky, answered. She gave no command. She gave no prophecy, only wind, the kind that carries spears, the kind that sings through the bones of mountains. Wulfharth returned with eyes full of storm, and the war began. The eastern orcs were fierce. They built fortresses of stone and bone, and their chief was said to wear a helm made from the skull of a frost dragon. But they were not prepared for a king who spoke the language of gods. Wulfharth faced their chieftain on the edge of a frozen ravine, and when the two armies halted, the king did not draw his sword. He stood still, his chest rising, and then, with a single deep breath, he shouted, not a war cry, not a command, a Thu'um. The shout pierced through time itself, tearing the wind asunder. The orc chief was ripped from existence, his body scattered into ash and smoke, his name unmade. The orc warbands fell to their knees, not out of fear, but from something older, memory, perhaps. The memory of Atmora. The memory of power that once ruled without a crown. The battle ended before it began. Wulfharth did not celebrate. He rebuilt. He walked among the ruins of the villages, helped lift stones with his bare hands, and even sat with weeping mothers. Though his presence made them tremble, for few mortals could bear the silence of a god who had worn flesh. Among his quieter deeds, he climbed the steps of High Hrothgar, not in pilgrimage, but in duty. There, the monks showed him the 418th step, shattered by a dragon in ages past. Wulfharth, without ceremony, knelt. With his voice, he spoke not a shout, but a whisper, and the stone rose again, healed by reverence. When his soldiers caught cold on a night of frost without fire, Wulfharth stood atop a cliff and swallowed a thundercloud. The storm vanished, the winds calmed, and warmth returned. His men called it a miracle. Wulfharth called it necessity. From that day forward, he was no longer just Shor's tongue. He became known as Kine's son, not by birth, but by spirit, the breath of the goddess, the wind given form, the mountain's voice made king. And in his presence, even the oldest warriors felt young again, like boys hearing their first tale of heroes, their first firelit saga in long halls during long winters. But the breath of kine, though gentle to her children, is still a storm. And a storm, once stirred, does not rest. Wulfharth would know peace again, but only for a moment. And the songs would not end in calm. Old Knocker. There are enemies of the Nords that wear blades and armor, and there are enemies that wear eternity. This song is of the second kind. Long before Wulfharth was crowned, even before his name was sung in halls of mead and stone, the Nords had known the whisper of a cruel god, Orki, the old knocker, a trickster and thief of years. In Atmora, it was said, he stole the lifespan of the Nords, dragging their future into darkness, making them wither before their time. But Orki was not done with them. Not yet. He looked upon Skyrim in the age of Wulfharth, strong, united, burning with the old faith, and he grew envious. And so Orki called out across the void and summoned a shadow from the dawn of time. He called Alduin, the World Eater, the Time Devourer, a creature whose hunger is the end of all stories. When Alduin descended upon the land, time itself shattered. In a moment, the Nords, old warriors, shield maidens, smiths and sages, were all reduced to children, barely 6 years old, confused and helpless. Only one boy remembered who he was. Wulfharth, now a child, but with the soul of a king, looked to the sky and saw the spiral of time unraveling. He knew that strength of arms would not save them now. He knew this was not a war of blades, but of spirit. So he did what no boy should be able to do. He prayed, not with words, not with chants, but with breath. He called out to Shor, the dead god, the chief of the gods, the one cast down by elven betrayal and remembered only in whispers. And Shor heard. His ghost, clad in starlight and rage, rose from the afterlife and met Alduin in the skies above Skyrim. The two fought as they had at the beginning of all things, when time was first formed and the world still young and trembling. The sky cracked. Thunder echoed with the screams of dead gods. Light turned sideways, and in the midst of it boy Wulfharth watched and learned. As he looked upon the battle of spirits, something stirred within him, an ancient memory, or perhaps a gift from the gods. And then he spoke. A new Thuum was born, one never sung before nor since. A shout so powerful it was named, "What happens when you shake the dragon?" Just so. He used it not to harm but to restore. With that single shout, time reversed. The children grew back into warriors. The years returned. The Nords stood once more, fierce and full of life, but magic always comes with a price. In saving his people, Wulfharth shook loose more than their lost years. He shook loose his own, and while the others returned to their proper age, he aged beyond measure, older than the greybeards, older than the stone halls of Windhelm. His hair turned silver, then white, then ash. His breath became smoke. He died not in battle, but in purpose, in sacrifice. His body was placed atop the tallest pyre Skyrim had ever built. The flames rose so high they say they touched Kine's hearth in the sky, and her tears became snow for 3 days and nights. The Nords wept, the winds went still. Even the wolves howled with reverence. Thus ended Wulfharth, not with sword in hand, but with divine breath upon the world. And the people whispered his final name, the Old Knocker, not for the god who tried to ruin them, but for the man who outlived time and knocked on death's door with a shout. The Ash King. Years passed since the flames of Wulfharth's pyre reached Kyne's hearth. The snow fell heavier in Skyrim. The wolves howled longer. The halls of the Nords echoed, but with silence, not song. The world moved on, as it always does. But the Nords remembered. They remembered the voice that bent time, the king that could not swear his oath aloud for fear it would split the sky. They remembered the name Ysmir, and they spoke it in the long winters when the firewood ran low. Then came the unrest in the east. The dwarves and devils, the strange peoples beyond the mountains, had begun to stir again. Their forges lit, their warriors trained, their whisperings reached Skyrim, and the old dream rose again, to reclaim what was lost, to retake the ancient holdings of the Nords, carved before even Ysgramor's time. The Jarls spoke of invasion, the warriors prepared, but in the end, they hesitated, for there was no king, no Ysmir to lead them. Then came the Devil of Dagoth. He entered their halls not with blade, but with words. Clad in strange robes, crowned with symbols no Nord could read, he claimed peace. And he claimed a secret. He said he knew the location of the heart of Shor. The room fell silent. The heart, the very essence of the dead god. It had been torn from Shor's chest by elven giants in the time before time, used as a banner to frighten the Nords, wielded as a weapon against their will to fight, until Ysgramor had shouted sense into the people and driven the giants back. But the heart was never found. It had been hidden, lost, forgotten. But now this Devil of Dagoth, silver-tongued and smiling, said otherwise. He claimed that the dwarves and devils of the Eastern Kingdom held the heart, that this was the true cause of their unrest, not politics or greed, but divine theft. The Nords asked him, "Why betray your own kind?" He replied, "Devils have betrayed each other since the beginning of time. Why stop now?" And they believed him, for there was power in his words. And more than that, hope. The tongues, masters of the voice, were summoned, and together they sang not a song of war, but of resurrection. They sang the ghost of Shor back into the world. The air burned, the skies cracked, and from the echo of a dead god, Wulfharth returned. He did not step from fire, he was drawn from ash. The long scattered cinders of his bones rose like a whirlwind, and in the presence of the god who once blessed him, they gathered, took shape, formed the Ash King. Wulfharth was reborn, not as a man, but as a vessel of purpose. He stood, eyes of ember, skin of smoke, breath like wind through stone. He did not ask questions. He knew the war had already begun. The Devil of Dagoth came to him and knelt. "Let me serve," he said. "It was I who brought this truth to the sons of Skyrim." Shor looked upon both and said, "Then you shall both be generals, one of ash, one of shadow." And so it was. The Ash King led the host of Skyrim, warriors, tongues, sons of Ysgramor, toward the eastern kingdoms. Alongside him marched the devil who had betrayed his own, whose words had reignited the fire of gods. Together they crossed the borders of history. The war had begun. But songs do not always end as they begin, and not all truths remain true. Red Mountain. They marched beneath a sky the color of blood, the sons of Skyrim, the reborn Ash King, and the Devil of Dagoth, all driven by the promise of reclaiming the heart of Shor. The eastern lands were still, too still. The wind did not blow, the birds did not cry, only the sound of boots in dust and the breath of warriors heading into myth. At the edge of the inner sea, the armies halted. Ahead lay Red Mountain, a crown of fire, jagged and cruel. Smoke curled from its peak like the fingers of a slumbering god. There the Dwemer had gathered, sorcerers, machine priests, brass golems of ancient design, a people more metal than flesh, guarding a secret older than the stars. And still, no sign of the heart. The scouts returned with grim news. The Chimeri allies of the Dwemer had been slow to muster, their armies distant. Dagoth said this was no accident. "The tribunal has betrayed their king," he whispered. "They send me in their place, for they know Lorcan walks again." To the Nords, Shor was Lorcan. To the Chimera, he was the enemy. To the Dwemer, an obstacle to be erased. Still the Nords believed. They had to. The army advanced. Wulfharth, clad in ash and wind, walked beside Shor himself, now made flesh once more, his divine spark reignited by belief and purpose. Behind them, the Devil of Dagoth readied his house and his machines. But something was wrong. The land resisted. The sky darkened. The wind stopped listening. Then it happened. The mountain moved. It did not erupt. It rose. The sorcerers of the Dwemer, enfueled by blasphemy and brass, lifted Red Mountain itself and brought it crashing down upon Shor. The god was buried beneath molten stone and divine betrayal. The battle exploded into chaos. The devils turned on their Nordic allies. The dwarves unleashed horrors of metal and magic. Sorcerers shattered the sky with light. Brass beasts crushed men like ants. And in the heart of the carnage, Wulfharth roared. He killed the dwarf orc king Dumalakath, ending a twisted bloodline. His shouts cracked the ground. His fury turned soldiers to ash. But even his might could not turn the tide. The sons of Skyrim were slaughtered. Their songs were drowned in magma. Then came Vek, the devil known to some as Vivek. With words forged in lies and light, he cast the Ash King into oblivion, into hell itself. Wulfharth, too broken to fight, was swept away like soot in the wind. The battle was over. The heart had never been there. The war was a lie. Dagoth had deceived them. Or perhaps Dagoth had been deceived himself. What remained of the Nordic host limped back to Skyrim beneath a sky still red. That year would be remembered as Sun's death. Not for a season, but for a generation. But the gods are not so cruel as to forget their champions. Kain, grieving, lifted the ashes of Izmir into the sky of final mercy. His spirit rose once more, not to rule, not to fight, but to remind, to show the Nords the price of trust, the color of betrayal, and the lesson carved into the soul of Skyrim. Never trust a devil again. And so the voice fades into the mountains once more. The tale of Wulfharth, king, ghost, god, is not a simple saga, but a storm echoing through ages. He rose in silence, breathed with thunder, died with purpose, and returned in ash. And though time tried to bury him, the wind still remembers. Some names do not vanish. They linger in stone, in flame, in song, and in the hearts of those who listen. For legends never truly end. They only wait to be heard again. If these echoes stirred something within you, if the voice of old Tamriel still calls to you, subscribe to Tales of Tamriel and let the next legend begin.